seat. Young, take the second seat. Mr. Jamal. Gonna have to share a mic up there. And Mr. Huff, if you would take this last seat here. The format will be that each candidate has 20 minutes. They can use 10 of it to talk about themselves, and another 10 minutes for questions, or less time if that's what they want. So we'll start and go my left to right with Mr. Gil Cisneros.
There we go, there we go. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Gil Cisneros, and I'm running for Congress here in the 39th Congressional District. And whenever I talk about myself, I like to start with my family. My life has really been about service, and it starts with my family. My grandfathers were World War II veterans. My dad was a Vietnam veteran. I had uncles that were Vietnam veterans. And I joined the Navy out of high school, not only to follow in their footsteps, but it also gave me the best opportunity to move my life forward, to move it ahead. See, nobody in my family had ever gone to college before. In fact, my mother and most of her siblings hadn't even graduated from high school. But I was very fortunate that I had met a chief petty officer who saw something in me that I didn't even really see myself yet, and he recommended that I apply for this program. And what this program was, it was the Navy's Affirmative Action Program. They were trying to get more people of color into their officer ranks. So I did what this chief petty officer said. I applied for this program, and I got accepted. And 5 days after I graduated from high school, I went off to boot camp. And then after I finished boot camp, I went right back to school, except this time I was actually wearing a Navy uniform and spending my Monday through Friday 6 hours a day learning math, science, and English. And then we would go do our military duties, stand watches, PT, learn how to became a very good marcher. And after that time, after completing that program, I got a Navy ROTC scholarship. But that program changed my life. It gave me opportunity through education that I never knew existed before. And so, having grown up and having lived my whole life in Southern California, I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and I decided to take my scholarship and move back east to see what the East Coast was like, to see what winter looked like, to see what snow actually looked like. And I ended up going to the George Washington University. I studied political science, and after 4 years when I received my degree, I also received my commission in the United States Navy and went right back into the Navy after I graduated. So I spent the next 10 years of my life serving my country. I did 2 deployments, one Western Pacific deployment that took me to the Persian Gulf, and I also did a Mediterranean deployment as well. And I loved my time in the Navy. It was a great experience. It taught me leadership. It took me around the world. But after a while, I decided it was time for a different chapter in my life. I had met my wife, and she wasn't exactly Navy material, so decided to get out, and we settled back here in Southern California. But I was starting to miss something in my life, that commitment to service, that giving back. So I began to get more involved in my church. I started to serve on the finance committee there. I started to speak to kids about the importance of education and how it could change their life. And then one day, me and my wife were just driving to dinner. We were headed to an Outback Steakhouse, and we were just kind of having a playful conversation. My wife always used to like to play these games. She still likes to play these games with me, like, what if we could do that, or what if we could do this? And one day she asked me, what would you want to do if we ever won the lottery? And I looked at her and I said, I would want to start a foundation where I could help kids from underserved communities and give them that same opportunity through education that I had. Well, I think God was listening to us that day, because 2 weeks later we won the lottery. And it changed our life forever. And so we both looked at each other and we said, well, now we got to start that foundation. And that's exactly what we did. We started the Gilbert and Jackie Cisneros Foundation. And for the last 8 years, we've been giving out college scholarships, supporting and creating college access programs. We give books to kindergartners so that they can develop a love of reading. We supported math education programs in elementary schools. We started internships, both here locally and on the Hill back in Washington, D.C. We created a program where we bring high school kids from around the country to Washington, D.C. Let them live on a college campus to see what that's like. Give them that experience that they probably wouldn't have had otherwise, and really encourage them and build them up and let them know that they're capable of a lot more, just like that Chief Petty Officer did to me when I was a young 18-year-old. And I love the work that we do. It's been very incredible, and no matter what happens in this election, me and my wife are going to continue to do that work, helping kids, helping students for the rest of our lives. But along the way, people kept coming to me and said, Gil, we need to get you more involved. So I said, sure, what do you want me to do? So a friend set up an interview for me. It was a great interview, nice experience, and next thing you know, I'm being appointed by President Obama to serve on his Presidential Advisory Board for the Arts. Another time I was giving a speech to a group of students at one of my alma maters, Brown University, where I went to go get a master's degree in urban education policy because we were working with so many students. I wanted to learn the obstacles that they were facing. But as I was giving this speech after it, somebody came up to me and said, man, I love what you had to say and I want to get you more involved. And he said, sure, what is it you want me to do? So next thing you know, we're working with Michelle Obama, serving on her Reach Higher campaign, her Better Room campaign, to help kids from across the country, to help put them on a path to higher education. Doing the same work that we do here in Southern California, we're now doing it on the national level with the former First Lady. And again, after November 2016, people came to me again and said, Gil, we want you to run for Congress. I said, let me talk to my wife. And so I sat down with my wife. I needed her permission first, right, before I could do this. I think every married man knows that. And so we sat down and we talked about a lot of the issues that were important to us, like education and health care, comprehensive immigration reform, and common sense gun legislation. Everything that we've been fighting for, everything that we've been supporting, Donald Trump and Republicans have been trying to take away from us. They have their hands in the pockets of the corporations and the special interests. When I go to Washington, I'm letting everybody know that I'm not here to represent corporations. I'm not here to represent special interests. And that's why I've decided not to take any PAC money from any corporations, from any special interest. And we're going forward. When I go to Washington, I'm letting everybody know that I am going there to represent the people of the 39th Congressional District, and that's who I'm going to work for. And now, so far, our campaign is going very well. It's been going great. We've been building a lot of momentum and a lot of support. We have over 14 members of Congress who've endorsed us. We have a lot of local elected officials that have endorsed our campaign as well. We've become the candidate of the working people. We have over 10 unions and labor organizations that's supporting us. We got the California Labor Federation endorsement a few weeks ago. The DCCC put us on their red to blue list. So we're continuing to build that momentum because everybody sees me as the most viable candidate with the best platform to win the seat and to take it forward into the 21st century. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for letting me tell you a little bit more about myself. And I'd be happy to take any questions with the remaining time that I have. Thank you.
What's your view on sanctuary cities?
Like I said, I'm a big supporter of immigration reform. And I do not think it is the job of local governments to go out and enforce federal law. That's not their responsibility. We don't ask local governments to go out and enforce tax law, which is federal law. We shouldn't ask them to do anything else as well. So I'm in favor of what we're doing here in the state of California, and I'm going to support that fully.
Thank you.
Questions are welcome. Would you all please go to the mic so everyone can hear your question? Henry, you have a question?
I understand this illegal immigration issue, I think you really need to take a stand one way or the other, because you are on a congressional seat. If you are not taking an extension of your position, it's very difficult for us to make a decision too.
I'm taking
not a local
no.
that you're running.
I'm taking a stand. I'm for comprehensive immigration reform. When we've been working with education, we've had the pleasure of working with so many students, DACA students, dreamers that were brought here to this country through no fault of their own, that want to be here in our country and make an impact. You know, this is the only home that they've known.
We need only 3/4 of them.
We need to honor that.
Okay, we're only talking about a small portion. But the overall policy, we still need to stand up, is where we stand on the border. I mean, the border is very porous, and I myself is an immigrant, and I don't care what ethnicity you come from, and they all have to deal with illegal immigration.
Well, we need to deal with illegal immigration. I'm not saying to open up our border and let everybody in, but for those that are already here and that are making contributions to our country, why shouldn't we? If they want to be here and they want to do that, and they're making a great impact like these DACA students, why should we not want to be able to do it?
Well,
I'm for protecting. I'm for
DACA students, or in order that it's only 700.
I get you. I understand.
Let's set that aside.
Okay.
We still need to have a policy.
We do. We do have a policy.
And we can deal with that transition with a clear approach, I think.
Look,
Let me have a clarifying question here. What do you mean by comprehensive immigration? I hear that term, but I never hear it defined by the various...
we need to find a path to citizenships for the people that are here.
No, we don't. They're here illegally.
Please, ask questions, no yelling, let them answer, get his answer to it.
Hey, I will stand by that. We need to find a path to citizenship for people that are here. Now, I'm not saying that we need to open our borders and let everybody in here that wants to come in. We still need to protect our borders. But like I said, if somebody's here, they're making a contribution like these students, why would we not want to keep them here? And the thing is, I'm not for a border wall. I don't want a border wall. Most of the people that enter our country illegally don't come across the border anyway. They come here on a legal visa. You know, and that's what we need to change. We need to fix our immigration laws. But putting up a wall along the Mexican border is not the way to do that.
Okay, Mr. Cisneros has a few more minutes. If there are more questions, just come to the mic and...
Mr. Cisneros, you said in your literature that you don't take any PAC money. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are you accepting money from unions?
No, I'm not.
SEIU? No?
No,
Are
I'm
you
taking.
accepting money from their members?
I'm taking personal contributions just like every other candidate, but I'm not accepting any money from any unions or any corporations.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Mr. Cisneros? I'll call you Gil. That's okay.
We're on a first name basis here.
So you are actually advocating leaving people that are here illegally, that have stayed in this country, and see what we can do for them?
What I'm advocating for is the people that are here that are making contributions to our country to find them a path to citizenship.
We've done that before. I was part of the program, the amnesty program.
Okay.
That helped as far as getting them legal, but we have too many people coming into this country illegally. Nobody's against immigration. We're just saying we don't want them coming in illegally. My family came in 1958. I was 15 years old, and we had to wait 13 years before we were given permission to come. We came with the green card, and everything was fine. So what you gonna do about the illegals?
Well, I think we need, like I said, we need to change our laws. It shouldn't take you 13 years in order to become legally into this country.
So what do you mean changing the laws?
Well, we changed the laws to make it easier for you to apply for that green card, for you to come to this country. We can do that in Congress. It shouldn't have to take you 13 years. It shouldn't have to take you 20 years.
Well, it was after the Second World War, so things were, you know, but I mean, we came here legally. The only thing I'm against is the illegal people, because they don't contribute all that much.
Well,
No, they don't.
That's a matter of opinion.
Well, that may be so. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question if there's,
Mr. Cisneros, I just want to ask you, when you do go to Congress, will you stick with all the party voting, or will you be your own person? And one more thing I wanted to ask you, will you continue with tax cuts, or are you like with the party that want to do away with them? Thank you.
I'm going to Congress to represent the people of the 39th Congressional District. I'm not going there to be dictated by anyone that this is how I need to vote, or I should vote for this or vote for that. And that's one of the reasons I'm not taking any PAC money, so that I don't have any ties or any alliances to anybody else. So I'm going there as my own man. And what was the second part of the question?
Tax cuts. Are you gonna-
Oh, yeah. We need real tax reform. We need tax reform that's going to really help and support the middle class. Not like this corporate tax bill that was kind of forced down our throats by Republicans, that 70 of the cuts went to corporations. That's not real tax reform that we need. I'm willing to kind of work that we can give support and help to the middle class, our working people. That's what we need, and that's a tax reform that I'm going to fight for and support.
okay, then accept your time. Thank you very much.
I'm good. Good. 10 minutes? All right, well, thank you very much. And again, you know, I'm very proud, happy to be here today. Feel free to check out my website or come by our office. And you know, we're very proud to have the endorsements of organizations like Vote Vets, In Citizens United, and the Giffords. So thank you very much.
I'll signal you when we're halfway through. You have 20 minutes. I'll leave it like that. You have 10 left when I wait it.
Great. Thank you so much. I think I will also stand in front so you can see me, and I will have the opportunity to talk to you and answer some questions. I was invited to come and talk to you to meet with the residents of Rowland Heights and surrounding areas.
1 second. This is former Assemblywoman.
Oh, are you introducing me? Oh, okay.
Said your name.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, Tad and the Rowland Heights Community Coordinating Council, thank you very much for hosting this opportunity for some of the, we're not all of it, there are 17 of us. So for 4 of us to be invited to come and talk to you, it is truly an opportunity that gives us, opportunity to talk to you, and the others don't have. So I don't know if you're going to have a second half of the candidates to come and talk to you, but you know, this is an opportunity so I can talk to you about who I am and why I got to this site today, and then have the opportunity to talk to you. This is not a new area for me. I came here in 2011 when the gentleman that I worked for, Congressman Ed Royce, was inheriting a 3-county district to run for his re-election in 2012. And that's when I had the opportunity to come to this side of the East San Gabriel Valley to get to know the community as we were getting ready for his re-election. So I feel like I'm coming home. I feel like I'm meeting some of the friends that I haven't seen in a few years, like David and Terry Mulligan. So good to see you here, and our friends Judy, Carrie, Tad, Lynn, Martha, Charles. I feel like I'm coming home, and I hope that I will have the opportunity to represent you when I'm elected to the 39th Congressional District. And I'll tell you why. This is an adopted country that I love, and I would love the opportunity to continue to serve as I have for the last several years when I was working with Congressman Ed Royce. And you know, I also had the opportunity to go and serve you in Sacramento as your elected member of the State Assembly. But that opportunity did not come just easily. So I want to talk about who I am. I'm an immigrant from South Korea. I came here more than 4.5 decades ago. As a young girl, just finishing up my elementary school, my parents decided to come to the United States, but we first settled in Guam. and I finished my junior high there. I went to Hawaii for my high school education, and then I came here to California when I decided to go to USC. So my way to California, the mainland we call it when we were growing up from the islands, it went around the Pacific areas, and then I finally came here. This is an American dream I'm living. I am the youngest of 7 kids, and my parents, when they came to America, who would have thought then that their youngest child of 7 kids would be running for United States Congress? But I had the opportunity because, you know what? This is America. America provides opportunity for us to succeed on our own with hard work and determination. That's what my parents wanted for their children, especially for the youngest of 7 kids, because they knew if we stayed back in Korea, I probably would not have the opportunity to even have college education, but I did. So I have a very unique perspective and experience running for office, which I didn't think that I will, but I did. It didn't come easy. After I graduated from USC, I went to work in the private sector. I studied accounting. My degree allowed me to work in the private sector as a controller in a manufacturing firm, and then I also started my own business. And then as my family grew, you see, I married my husband that I met at USC. We've been happily married for 32 years, 4 children, all grown up. But it was in 1990 when my second child was born. I was staying home getting ready to return to work when I had the opportunity to meet then State Senator Ed Royce. He gave me the opportunity to work in the public sector, and I learned what it's like to give back to the community. And then he was immediately elected to United States Congress in 1992. So I transitioned with him and served for the 21 years in his congressional office. It was during that time I realized God had a different calling. I mean, as an immigrant family, your parents will tell you to pursue a career in law, medicine, or doctor, you know. I mean, because those provide economic stability. For immigrant families, that is important. But growing up on the island of Guam, I learned something different. My mom would take me down to the beaches and ask me to collect cans and bottles. At the time, I didn't know. I didn't know what it was. I thought, oh my God, Mom, geez, you're taking me down to the beach again. I need to collect cans and bottles. But you know what? That is something that my mom taught me. She would recycle, give the money back to church. This is how immigrant families start our lives in America, helping one another. Before our community center was built, before anything was built, this is where we get together and help one another, assimilate into a new culture. I didn't know it then, but that was a valuable lesson that I learned from my mom, which carried with me as an adult. So when I was raising my 4 kids, it wasn't surprising that I will raise my kids to do the same thing. When my kids would come to me and say, Mom, I need some money to put gas in my car, I go, you know what? Go and recycle those. One bag will give you about $30, $40. So it's not, I mean, it's nothing new. It's just how we grew up, very humble. And then I had this opportunity in 2013 to leave congressional office to run for state assembly. Congressman Ed Royce encouraged me to do so. After having worked with him side by side, working on casework, helping the community, doing all of these things, and we saw that there was an opportunity for me to go and serve further. So I got elected, I served, I broke the 2/3 supermajority when I won in 2014. Regardless of what party you're affiliated with, you understand one party dominance is bad. So I broke the 2/3, and I'm very proud of my record in the State Assembly, having stood and voted against every single tax increase bills that came before me. I'm very proud of my record. I've been getting A ratings from the California Chamber of Commerce. National Federation of Independent Business would call me the best vote for businesses. I'm very proud of it. I served on the Education Committee for, to work on pro-education legislation. I served as Vice Chairwoman for the Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy, so I could work on policies that would be helpful for our businesses. I served on the Transportation Committee. I mean, all these things experience that I had when I served in the California State Assembly. It was, again, a learning experience for me, but at the same time, the 20-some years I worked with Congressman Ed Royce, working on not only the domestic issues, but on the foreign affairs policy. As you know, he's the chairman of the foreign affairs policy. And I served as an interlocutor to work on issues that matter to us. Who would have thought that today, Korea is on the news every single day? As an immigrant from Korea, what's happening in the Korean Peninsula? It's amazing. What's happening with what is about to happen in a month when President Trump is about to meet with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. This is an experience I didn't know that would be helpful as I'm running for United States Congress, because right now, not only our region, but America needs a representative who understands not only the domestic issues, but foreign policy issues. I think I bring all of those to you, having worked on those issues. I even went to North Korea as a member of the congressional delegation. I went to the region in Asia to work on 6 party talks when we were trying to control North Korea from weapons of mass destruction. These are the issues that is front and center right now. So while we're working on domestic issues to make sure that we provide policies for businesses to grow and get away from all these over-regulation and over-taxation that we're already faced with, we also need somebody who understands that we can have a voice to be the United States as a superpower in the world, internationally and globally. I have the experience having worked with Congressman Royce side by side. Congressman Royce is supporting me. He's endorsing me. And you know, you've had the best representative in Congressman Ed Royce. I work with him. I understand the issues. I'll be honored if I can have your vote and trust. I will leave. How much time do I have? Oh, I have 10 minutes left? Perfect. I can either take that, use it as a Q&A, or if you guys, I mean, I know we have other candidates that are running for the same office and they did not have the opportunity to talk to you. So if there's time, I would love to invite my time for other candidates to speak to. But let's leave it up, open it up for your questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I've lived in this area. I've lived here since the early 70s, and I started off as a Republican, and unfortunately that party has left me with my values, and theirs have parted ways, unfortunately. Ed Royce, I voted for him, and there, toward the end of this, his running, I would call his office very frequently.
Do you have it's time for questions.
My question.
Not statements.
Okay, I'm concerned that how would you respond as far as reflecting our values, as far as like gun control, and we live in California, which doesn't have concealed carry, you know, and he voted for reciprocity of concealed carry. And we're not in Texas. We don't choose to live in that kind of state. So how would you represent us, and would you be having town halls and communication with us?
Happy to, yes. That's what I did when I was in the state assembly. I would come back to the district every weekend, as most of us do. I would open it up for community leaders to come and meet with me on a regular basis. First thing I did when I went to the assembly, and this is what I did when I was with Ed Royce. After I left him in 2013, I don't know, I mean, I'm not in his office, but what I learned, what I implemented, I took it with me as I served you as a member of the State Assembly. I organized various advisory council members. I invited the community to come and give me input on different issues, on different community organizations. I had small business advisory group, I had veterans group, I had education leaders serving in all different issues. So we had a regular meeting. I would present you with the list of the bills that the Assembly or we are working on in Sacramento, and then we will invite you to give me your input, and we will reflect it that way. I'll be happy to have a regular town hall meeting, as I've always done, and then invite you to do the same thing. When I go to Washington, D.C., what I'm going to do is bring back the community advisory committees. We have an election every 2 years. We invited the community to serve for the same 2-year period. So you can come and join me, serve with me for 2 years, and then we will have a roundtable discussions. Your issues will be reflected as I represent you. Case in point, there has been the Asia Pacific Congressional Advisory Council, because I served as an interlocutor for the US-Korea Interparliamentary Exchange. We had the community come together and work with me on the issues regarding the North Korea, because that is one issue that I know very, very well. And it was during that discussion, they said, we need to expand the Radio Free Asia into North Korea. That was a model we had, Radio Free Europe. And so we expanded the program into Radio Free Asia and included Radio Free North Korea. This is where we invite the North Korean defectors that have come and resettled here in the United States. They give me input, and we expand, using their voices, will broadcast into North Korea. They know who they are. And this is the kind of thing that really helped to make changes from within and making changes the North Korea is. So I was very happy to work on those North Korea human rights legislation, North Korea adoption legislation, and then that expanded into the US-Korea free trade agreements, all of these things. So this is your input that you give to the legislators, and we will reflect that. And I'll be very happy to invite you and work with me on those.
And we're getting behind now, so we'll maybe have some more time at the end for you to take some more questions.
You said I had 10 minutes.
Hey, I looked at my watch. You went over longer than I thought you had. But I'll bring it back up if we have some.
All right, thank you so much.
Just one short question, and that was, she asked a question about the gun control. What's your, but you never answered it, what's your viewpoint on not allowing assault weapons in the state?
Quick answer, Young, because we've got to move on.
Trade.
Okay, well, in order to take care of the gun legislation, we first have a lot of laws on the books. They are not implemented, so we need to make sure those are taking place in the first place. But we also need to address the shortage of beds in the hospitals to take care of the mental health patients. I think that's where we need to do it. And also, the information that we collect from background checks are not shared, because they are not, states are not mandated to share that into the background information system. So I think that's one of the things that we need to handle.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you all for welcoming us here this evening. My name is Sam Jamal, and I'm running here for Congress in the 39th Congressional District. I was honored to be here last month at your meeting and hear about the conversations on preserving the open spaces in our community here. And it reminded me that conversation is rooted in preserving. It's rooted in preserving the hard work that you all put together in building this community and building your own American dreams. And for me, that's why I'm running. I'm running to preserve that American dream and that experience of whether you're a first-generation American like my parents, or you've been here to 5 to 7 generations, that opportunity to own a home, to start a family, to make sure that we have the best schools in the world and we have the best jobs available so families can get ahead. That's why I'm running. But when I also think of Rowland Heights, It reminds me of the drive I'd have with my mom. I grew up in La Mirada, over to Rowland High School when I was a junior in high school, playing basketball. And I was never very good at basketball. It just took me a few years to realize that that was the case. And so my mom would drive with us every Saturday for practice. Like any good mom, she'd just sit there and encourage me to keep pushing. And when it came down to deciding whether or not I would keep trying and keep getting ahead, because I always had aspirations of going to play basketball at UCLA. I ended up, like young Kim, going to USC for college, so we changed courses there. But I remember the conversation I had with my dad when I realized we couldn't do this anymore. One, because we couldn't afford to pay for those basketball program. And two, I wasn't very good and I needed to start focusing on just getting into a good college. And I remember what my dad said about, you don't give up, you focus on the bigger picture. And for him, the not giving up was his American story. Because when he came here in the late 60s, he came with a few $100s in his pocket and a dream, like so many other immigrants. He got off that airplane from the Middle East and was pouring gas at a gas station the first day he was here. First day in America, was starting to get to work. My mom was similar, had to roll up her sleeves to build her American story. She came here to finish high school. Spanish was her first language, and she had the intimidation of having to learn a new language in a new country. And for her, it came down to the same thing. Work hard so you can start to build a foundation. Neither of my parents were able to finish college. For my dad, his car broke down and he had to choose between fixing his car or paying for classes. He needed his car to get to work, so he went to fix his car. And so that stuck in him, that commitment that his kids were going to go to college and live out that American story. My mom's similar. She couldn't finish college because my grandma was a seamstress when she came here, and she was working in downtown LA, and she was getting older and couldn't continue to work, so my mom had to help in the household. So when the two of them met and started their lives, it came down to working together and building a family so my siblings and I could have a taste of that American dream. And that's when my dad told me when we were sitting down, and he was telling me, we gotta stop playing basketball and focus on college. It was about building that American dream, going to school and giving back. And so that's what I did. I was able to go to USC for college, and while I was at USC, I remember walking to class as a freshman on September 11th. Now, I'm half American and half Latino. And so on that day, I felt like an outsider. I grew up around immigrants, grew up from folks from all over the world, but I didn't know what my place was. And so what I did was I studied and figured out, what do communities do when they're on the outside? You get involved, you get engaged. For me, it was working in civil rights. And so I started my career out as a civil rights lawyer, moved out to Washington, D.C. for law school, and then was working in civil rights. And then from there, got involved in the process. And my entire career, when it first started, was focused on bringing voices to the table, bringing communities together, problem solving. So I worked in the U.S. Senate. I worked there when the Affordable Care Act passed. I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly about that. I worked there when we passed Wall Street reform. And I worked there when we started to climb out of the recovery. And then after that, I had a chance to serve in the Obama administration, the Commerce Department. My job was rolling back outdated regulations that were hurting small businesses from being able to export overseas. And so I was working there to help build our economy back. And then I thought I was going to come home, but I had a chance to be a chief of staff in the House of Representatives. And for me, at 30 years old, to be a chief of staff, with my background, it was a chance to be at the table and start to advocate for the middle-class American story that I grew up with. But what I saw when I left was that Washington forgot about us. Washington forgot about the homeowners who were sacrificing to get ahead. The senior who's struggling to pay those prescription drugs. The student saddled with student debt. So I left. And I came home and decided, okay, I'm going to move back. I started living in Fullerton, was working in clean energy, and decided to start working on creating clean energy jobs. Because I figured the best way to make change and improve our country was start to create jobs. And so I did that. I worked for Solar City, and then I worked for Tesla. We were starting to build and create jobs. But then after this election, what I saw really on both sides was the conversations really started to slip away from that American dream. I saw a division that I'd never seen before that doesn't reflect our community here. I saw folks just worried about what does that economic future hold. And then I started to wonder, was my family's American story still possible today? My dad came with nothing, but he rolled up his sleeves and encouraged my siblings and I to get to work so we can go to college. I'm not sure that's possible today when people have decades of student debt ahead. My dad bought a home in La Mirada, it was $48,000. The average home in Fullerton today is $641,000, literally a half mile away, and that was 1970s. Home ownership's becoming out of reach. And then when it came to the jobs, working at Tesla, you see where the economy's going. You see automation, you see machines and where that's changing. And then I started to wonder, are those same jobs that help my family provide going to still be available? You have to tear tickets at a movie theater. I went and saw a movie this past Saturday, now you can put it on your iPhone and the ticket's not torn. My dad worked in fast food at Jack in the Box. There's now machines that can take your whole order, and so this job that he had to help put food on our tables is disappearing. We saw Kimberly Clark and Fullerton leave. We've seen Sears shut down at the Brea Mall. Now it's going to be condos. Our economy is changing, and we can't afford the lack of focus on the economy that's been going on in politics. And so that's why I'm running. I'm running because I worked in business, in the innovation economy where jobs are changing, and I worked in government, in the House, in the Senate, as well as in the executive branch. So I know how the place works. I know when policies are broken, and I know what we need to do to fix them. And right now, we need to focus on day one and getting the job done for our community. We need to make sure we're pushing policies that are going to help small business owners create jobs, especially in those first 3 to 5 years when it's a struggle to get started and push up the hill. We need to make sure that we're focused on building the next generation of jobs in clean energy, in technology. We need to make sure our healthcare costs are affordable. We can't have families go bankrupt on healthcare. My sister has a pre-existing condition. She hits her cost, her annual cap every year in February. We can't have families struggle there. And so I'm running to make sure that we have a voice in building our economy. Because I want to make sure that just as my parents raised me to not give up, and they didn't give up on this American story, this American dream, that the next people that come here, or our children, the next generation, can have a shot at the American dream. And right now, we need to fight for that shot. It's divisive in Washington. Regardless of your political party, you can't be happy with the status quo. Too many folks are falling behind. You turn on the TV, too many people are yelling at each other. We're not looking to lower those day-to-day costs, whether it's housing affordability, whether it's childcare costs, whether it's student debt. We need to turn the page. And my campaign is about turning the page. It's about preserving what we've built here. Whether it's those open spaces in our hills, whether it's the dream of owning a home, but it's also looking towards the future and making sure we're making home ownership available. We're making sure that you can retire securely. We're making sure that Social Security and Medicare is a commitment and a promise the government made to you, and it doesn't break, and it's not broken. And so that's what our campaign's about. My website's sam4congress.com. I'll be here after to answer your questions, and I look forward to having a conversation. Not just a conversation on this election, but a conversation on what we can do to continue to build our community, how we can continue to bring folks together. Because I think the amazing part of this room is folks are from all walks of life, all political parties, but you're here together to solve community problems. You come here once a month, you meet, and you have a conversation on what we can build together. That's the kind of government I want to bring. So I'd love to answer some questions. I don't know how much time I have. I have 7 minutes for questions, so I'd love to answer your questions. Thank you.
For coming tonight.
Thank you.
I'd like to have your take on the wall to protect California, and also California as a sanctuary state.
So first on the border, when I was the chief of staff in Congress, I actually went down to the border on Arizona and California. And what we saw there was a bunch of different technologies that we're using in place to secure our border today. Our government spent billions of dollars already securing our border and putting resources in. Whether it's drones or whether it actually is a physical wall, we've put money into this. As a part of a comprehensive immigration bill that reforms our visa system, that does provide an earned path to citizenship, we need to look at making sure we have a secure border, and we're making sure we're funding the border security and using different technologies to do that. I also want to make sure our visa system works though, because when it comes to immigration, 75% of our agricultural workers are undocumented. Everything we eat is touched by undocumented labor. This means the system's broken. Regardless of where you are on the issue, and there's a lot of different opinions on this, the system's broken. We need to bring folks together to solve it in a comprehensive way. George W. Bush had pushed this, President Obama pushed this, and I'm hoping the next Congress will work with President Trump to get this done. I think we need for our California economy to do that. When it comes to California sanctuary law, I think the federal government needs to do the job of enforcing immigration. The reality is our law enforcement's stretched thin. I was at the Fullerton Council of PTAs, and they were talking about law enforcement officers at schools. At Fullerton Union High School, they have an officer there 4 days a week. They can't afford the 5th day because the city pays for that. And that officer is also covering the entire community. God forbid something happens, we don't have an officer during that full time. So we already see our law enforcement stretched thin. I don't want to see them also stretched to do other things when we need to focus on what their day-to-day job is. And so when I look at this, I look at, let's focus on comprehensive reform. Let's bring folks together. Let's bring the business community, the faith community, the civil rights community, immigrant rights community, and let's figure out a comprehensive solution, because I think we can get this done. We were so close in the past. I think we can get this done.
Sam, can
yes.
you say, if you're elected to Congress, what will your primary objective be?
My primary objective will be lowering out-of-pocket health care costs. Social Security's cost of living adjustment is 1.4%. The cost of Medicare is increasing 22% each year. That doesn't work if you're on a fixed income. But worse, those out-of-pocket health care costs don't work for small business owners who want to provide health care for their employees or just trying to provide health care for themselves. And ultimately, health care ties into whether we can create jobs. If we're spending 19% of our gross domestic product on health care, which we are, how are we going to compete with the rest of the world that's spending 7 to 12% on health care? And the reality is we are competing with the rest of the world to create good jobs here in America. So my #1 priority is going to be health care and lowering those costs. #2 is going to be quickly focusing on creating good jobs. As I mentioned, our economy is changing. You're having automation. You're having global competition. We need to be able to create good middle-class jobs here where people can afford a home, set aside some money for retirement, and start a family. And so that would say #1 and #2 would be health care and jobs. Yes?
So what will you do to help prevent global warming?
Thank you. My experience has been in clean energy. So I work for Solar City and Tesla. I've worked there, I've seen the technology, I've seen our capability. We can start transitioning to 100% clean energy today. Right now, solar is actually more cost effective than any other fossil fuel. We just need to make sure it's scalable, deployed, and affordable. When you're saving 10 to 20% on your bill as a homeowner, as a business, by putting solar on your home, you're actually putting money back in your pocket. We can power Rowland Heights with this. We can power this entire community with clean energy. And that means you're saving money, but also you're fighting climate change. And what you can do is create jobs by doing that, save people money, and start to address a larger issue like climate change, which in our community is actually a big factor. When you look at the threat of wildfires, when you see the concerns of drought, 10th on the water board, we're gonna have to deal with a water issue here. We're gonna have to invest in clean energy. We're gonna have to invest in building out our response and adaptation to climate change. And so for me, it would start with the clean energy jobs, because that starts the trigger effect, and I think we can work with both parties on that because everyone agrees with jobs. Yes?
Your position is clean energy. What is your position on Tres Hermanos solar farm?
I support keeping the space open. I believe that we're running out of open spaces here in our community, and I want to make sure the next generation can take those hikes and have those open spaces. So while I support solar, I don't think we need to do it on our open spaces. I think we can preserve our open spaces while looking at different avenues for solar. I actually put out a plan that we can start putting solar on our post offices. We have 32,000 square feet of post offices all across the country. We can put panels there that would power the postal service, while at the same time generate enough electricity that we can start to power entire communities. I think we can do this without preserving our open spaces. We just have to think outside the box.
That's great.
As we hear all the candidates, that everybody says he's going to do this, he's going to do that, and that very well, because these are all the issues we are concerned with. But everybody knows that Congress is not doing a good job, and the system seems breaking down.
I wonder why.
So I want to know, why do you think when you go to Washington, D.C., you can make a difference? What are you going to do differently?
Well, I think what differentiates me, I think that's a good question on what I would do differently. To me, these aren't just words. These aren't just positions. Number one, they're not just words and positions because I'm just getting started in a family. I'm just engaged to the woman of my dreams, and we want to be able to start a home and provide in our community. I can't afford to do nothing Congress just on my end of wanting to start my American story, my middle class life. But number two, I worked as a chief of staff in Congress, the highest role you can be in a member of Congress, and I worked as legislative counsel in the House. I've seen how you can do stuff well, and I'll be honest with you, I've seen how you can do a lot of stuff bad. And so it's more a matter of knowing how to do the job right away and being able to turn the page and get right to work. And my commitment to you is I'm going to go up there and get to work right away because I've already pledged to only serve up to a term limit of 10 years. Because I believe you can go up there and do the work right away. There's no job in the world that you can go to and say, put me up here for 20 years and check back then and see if we've done a good job. But that's Congress today. Folks go up there and just stay and stay and stay and want the job. My job is I want to get to work. We can't afford to keep doing what we're doing. And so I pledge to you that I'll keep coming back here on Mondays and answering your questions and making sure we start to move the needle forward. One, because I know how the place works. And number two, because I'm not going up there to be it forever and camp out. I'm going up there to help solve problems and make sure my family's American story is still possible for the next generation.
Sam, I have to cut you there. Your 20 minutes has passed. I'm going to call you up back up. You were right. I had shorted you 7 minutes. Come on up. I can ask you some more questions. Sorry about that. I'm getting old. I figured it wrong in my head. Okay. So if there's any more questions now for you.
Like a few minutes. Okay.
Okay. My question is, nobody mentioned about the homeless people. And this is 4 years ago, it's only 27,000. But now it's over 58,000. And I heard it's almost 158,000 because our California, the weather is so good. If you don't do something, and they will increase double and triple. How to do? Give me the answer.
There is no sure answer, as you know. We do recognize that the government and the policymakers have kicked the can down the road too far. I live in Orange County and I served the 65th Assembly District. The first thing I recognized was that we have a problem here. I asked my staff to do some study and analysis in my first few months. And what they came back to me was, well, in the late 1980s, we were just talking about different segments of homeless population, but I was very focused on and worried about homeless youth population. I wanted to know why we have so much problem, and they said, you know what, if we don't handle the homeless youth today, they will grow up to be chronically homeless adults, and the problem will get out of hand. In late 1980s, there were about 5,000 statewide homeless youth. And so, legislatively, they put away and allocated about $300,000 to take care of this issue. Well, about 30 years later, they're still working with $300,000 a year budget to handle that issue. When I was elected in 2014 and I got this study back, I was told in Orange County, in my district alone, there is over 3,600 homeless youth population. Right, 30 years ago I was told there were about 5,000, working with $300,000 budget a year. This is not how we can solve the homeless issue. So I immediately put in a legislation, asked for $25 million to handle this issue, because I wanted to provide a temporary emergency transitional area for taking care of our homeless youth so they have some place to be and finish the education. Because it will allow them to stay for about 24 to 36 months. Why is that important? Because that's long enough to finish school, wherever they are. Now, that legislation didn't get out because, you know what, it was introduced by a Republican member. I also served in the Budget Committee. I found a way to work in a bipartisan way to get the results for the district that I wanted. So I got not 25 million, but 20 million that will provide funding to address this homelessness issue. That's what that's what I learned. And then I further started looking around, what can we do? Why is this problem not getting solved? And you know what? We have different categories on the homeless population. We need to separate that out. One, somebody who needs just a little bit of help, maybe 1 or 2 months, and then they can get back on their feet. The other category If they need a little bit of a longer term, but they need training. So they get some kind of a training that can get them some jobs that will get them on the street, out of poverty area, and then get them to the level that they can provide for their family members. And then there is a third category, which is totally unhelpable. Even if you want to be helped, for whatever reasons, we have a lot of people who are mentally unstable. They need help, and we need more hospital beds to take care of them. That's another category. Now, the people, the first and two categories who need help, we need to bring in the private partnerships to work with the government. And there is a way that we can do it. We cannot solve all thousands of people that are on the streets who need help. But if you provide them with the right tools to do so, for example, Reignite Hope in Los Angeles County is a nonprofit organization that started on the Skid Row. They work with a private partner in a warehouse. The private company gave that to the manufacturing firm, and then you know what? They are providing the welding school, graduating about 40 to 50 students, 4 months at a time. Over 7 months, they have the more than 300 certified by the American Welding Society. They have a certification. They are getting good jobs. They are stable. They are not homeless. They have dignity back. This is something we can do. The private company have allowed this to happen, and then helping the homeless population. We may not solve them thousands at a time, but over the several years, we have helped several hundreds of people who are self-sufficient. This is what we can do, and you know what? We can do this because my family member is doing this. My nephew is doing this. He's providing the factory, training the welders, homeless people off the jobs, veterans, they are being helped. If we say, no more NIMBYs, but IMBYs, take care of them, we can get this done. We just need people with the right attitude to want to help. Stop kicking the can down the road, and let's get together, have a conversation. If it's some government support, we'll do it. If we need the private sector to come together, we gotta do it, and we can get this done.
I'm a little tired of career politicians and corporations that work together to increase inequities in our society. We have a huge difference between the wealthy and the poor. And I'm not hearing anything except turn it over to private business. They'll help all these people. It's just another way to make money. It's like turning our schools into...
And you have a question for her.
Yes. What are you going to do to promote income equality in this country?
What am I going to do to promote income inequality?
What are you going to do to fight income inequality? How are you going to make people more equal? Give more people a chance?
Well, first of all, we need to encourage warfare to warfare. I mean, warfare to workforce, right?
You're making it into a business then. That's what all you Republicans want to do, is turn it into a business and make money off of it.
Your time is up.
My time is up.
I just want to say one thing regarding Korea. When President Trump does go next week to meet with Korea, it will be the anniversary when Ronald Reagan went to Russia and made that big statement, tear down that wall. There's some history there.
I would love to see peaceful Korean Peninsula, and thank you so much. I have high hopes too. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, our final speaker is former Assemblyman and former State Senator Bob Huff.
You know, I'd like to take a chapter out of somebody else's pledge. Will you all please stand up for a little bit? You've been sitting a long time. Come on, stand up, stretch. I learned a long time ago, the mind can only absorb what the seat can endure. And you've been enduring a lot here. So just stretch. I can start talking while you're stretching. That's not a problem. It's a privilege to be here tonight. Ted, thanks for helping organize this and the coordinating council. Thank you for having me here along with the other candidates. I think educating yourselves to who is running for position is super important. Whether you vote for me or not, and I hope you will, but whether you vote for me or not, it's important to know who you're electing. Because when you're reading about us on some piece of paper, or you're seeing a video or a 15-second ad on Facebook, you're not going to really get to know who the person is. And to that end, it's been a pleasure to represent most of Rowland Heights for 12 years in the state legislature. But let me tell you a little bit about my past, which those of you who've been hearing me lately have heard it, but most of you don't know. And it goes to what some of the other candidates are doing, and that's talking about our upbringing. I do believe our experiences, how we grow up, what we've been exposed to, how we make decisions. As you see a pattern through life, it helps you understand and predict how someone's going to act when they get into a new situation. And certainly, I think Washington, D.C. would be new for anybody up here. We've all had some exposure to it, but it's different when you're in the decision-making seat. So, how many of you know where Imperial Valley is? I like to do this. There's a few hands there. And I usually say, you got lost, didn't you? Or you may be going from San Diego to Arizona because you go Interstate 8, you go through there, you take Highway 86, you go down that way, or Highway 111, those are the only in-ways or out. I mean, only way to get through there. But that's where I grew up. My grandfather homesteaded down there in 1906 when it was desert and Salton Sea was forming at the time because the Colorado River was flooding through the whole area and creating Salton Sea. But having said that, it is a very rich area, 500,000 acres of irrigated land, and that's what it is. It's the 5th most productive county in the nation agriculturally. It has water, a very cheap supply, I should say, from the Colorado River, even though it's starting to dry up over there. But the value of growing up on a farm, both my parents, by the way, were trained as teachers, but my dad stopped teaching to go back and help his father, who was starting to have some heart problems. And so, being on the farm, you learned at a very early age personal responsibility. The closest town was 10 miles, 11 miles away. You also learned the value of hard work. The animals didn't feed themselves or clean up after themselves and all those other things. And there was a lot of chores to do around the house and the yard, but also out in the fields. And my father was very strict about making sure that all of us got out there. And so it was play in the early days, but somewhere around the time I was about 7, it started to become real work because we had cotton fields, and something I could do is thin the cotton because I couldn't tell the difference between a weed and a cotton, but it didn't really matter at that point. You got to thin it so you got space for the plant to grow. And later on, I figured out the difference between cotton and weed, but Dad would get after me when I took out the wrong one. But nevertheless, when we had hired help out in the fields, we were there right beside them. I moved into the huge town of Imperial when I was 10 years old, 3,007, counting dogs and chickens. And Imperial was sort of the melting pot of that area. Everybody went to the same school, so at a time when in the cities, we were busing people to try to get integration. We were all integrated. And by the way, I was a minority because it was a farming community and we're right bordering to Mexico. Back then, the border was very porous. People walked across, they walked back at the end of the day. It's a different world than what we have now. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But, you know, it was the values you learn in a small town. So I was the youngest of 6 kids, not 7 like young Kim, but youngest of 6. And our values hung around the family first, and then it was church, and then it was community. And so with the family, we were always very tight. But at church, whenever the church door was open, we were there. That was the way it functioned. And yet, you know, for me, there was a personal decision somewhere along the line. You don't get Christianity by, you know, just jumping in water or being close to it like a car in a garage, right? You got to make a decision somewhere. So that was, for me, became my way of life. But also the community. And you learn to give back to the community. My father served on the school board, as had his mother. My mom served as the Sunday school superintendent, meaning at church. She was in charge of all the other teachers, and then she taught some too. How she did that, incidentally, I don't know, because 6 kids, and she went back to work at the juvenile hall when I was 3 years old, and then take her all out, and we didn't have a drying. You had to hang out the clothes on the line and all of that, no dishwasher except us kids. It was a whole different time. But that's what I grew up in learning the value of family, church, and community. And by the way, the family name was very important. So you didn't do anything to sully the family name. And if you go back down to Imperial now, and I'm sure the Democrat and Congressional Campaign Committee's done that already, they seem to have done everything else. You'll still find the Huff name is a valuable name. My oldest brother still lives down there. He volunteers as the chaplain at Sentinel Prison. I've got a nephew that is the paid chaplain out there at Sentinel. It's only a few miles from our farm. But anyway, the name was something to be valued, and it still is to me. That's part of who I am. So how did I get into politics? Moved to Diamond Bar. You've heard of that place, just a few miles away. In 1983, bought a business and was working that. In fact, I liked Diamond Bar because it was freeway close to basically my clients in several different counties. And so as I took care of that, I got involved in the church and found myself in charge of the building program. And many of you heard this story, but we had a conditional use permit that was granted by the county, and yet the city of Diamond Bar had been newly incorporated just a few months before. So what do you do with a conditional use permit that's been issued by the county, but enforced now by the city? I didn't know what a conditional use permit was, but I figured expiring was not a good thing. So went down to the planning commission. We've talked about things with the staff commission. Bottom line is, the chairman at a meeting says, "Mr. Huff, are you willing to take our conditions?" I said, "Well, Mr. Chairman, if I take the conditions, you can't build the church." "Well, Mr. Huff, if you don't take the conditions, we're not going to let you build the church." I said, I was so frustrated because I had voted for incorporation, just like many of you in this community voted for incorporation, and I thought that I would have another more responsive level of government, and these guys were turning down that church. So I was frustrated and I was angry. I thought, you do what you got to do what I got to do. We appealed at the city council, which was the only thing we could do. We packed the place, and you know what? We got that extension for the conditional use permit, and that church was built. But it pulled me in the process because I learned at that time that not everybody that you vote for has your best interest at heart, and not every decision you make politically at the ballot, like in this case incorporation, works in your best interest. Now I'm glad that they incorporated after that, but it pulled me into the process because I thought I could do a better job than those jerks that were on the city council. And, you know, I became a jerk after a while. No, I mean, so I served on the planning commission for a year and then went into the city council. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek. I was elected at the same time as Carol Herrera back in 1995. Carol's still serving there. But one of the things that happened, there was 11 people running for 2 positions, and the person that was going to get bumped, Phyllis Bateman, the late Phyllis Bateman, some of you may remember her. She's a real estate agent in town. She's the first mayor of Diamond Bar. But she was not going to get reelected, but she was the only one in town that knew that. But Phyllis was very involved regionally in transportation issues. She was on the Alameda Corridor Board, not the Alameda Corridor region, but the Alameda Corridor, the trench project up to LA. She was an alternate to MTA. She was on Foothill Transit Board. She was in the Council of Governments Transportation Committee. I knew we were going to have a very big vacuum in the city and in the region when Phyllis got unelected, as she did. So I stepped up thinking I could fill her shoes. But you know what? I think she had size 8s and I had size 12, and they didn't fit. But metaphorically speaking, she had huge shoes because there was no way I could run my business and do all the other things and help project the city's transportation issues. And you have the same issues we did. You need the 5760 fixed. You need better transportation getting downtown. We'd like to see that Gold Line extension out this way along the 60 corridor instead of down to Whittier. All of those things, but I was fighting for those things before. So I went to the city manager, and I said, I'm going to get involved regionally in transportation. What's the best way to do that? So I went to the Council of Government and said, hey, I want to get involved in transportation. And so I became on the the COG committee. More importantly, they needed to do a study of the freight coming out of the port. And I said, I'd like to chair that study. Well, that became the Alameda Corridor East Construction Authority. That was the beginning part of that. So I served on the study that quantified how the port growth is going to impact our region with traffic. And then I was on the construction authority to help build the grade separation they're still doing now. And while I was there, before I went up to the State Assembly, we helped get $400 million of funding for that, what became a $1.5 billion project. So I've been involved in regional government, sat on the Foothill Transit Board. I did get there, was chair of that as well, and was very busy regionally. What I liked about regional government was, you see a problem, and you just try to figure out how to fix it. You don't have an R by your name, you don't have a D by your name, you just have a problem, fix it. I didn't know who the Republicans and Democrats were, but it's mostly a Democrat Valley, it was them too. And so, you know, the way term limits work in Sacramento, it gives opportunities for others, and I thought I could go up there and find some more transportation funding. So I asked to be vice chair of transportation, and I got that as a freshman, only to find out that you really got to be in budget to get money, and that's a whole different process. But nevertheless, as vice chair of transportation, at least got me in the same room with a lot of like-minded people that were trying to get transportation funds. And that was always one of my primary focuses while in the state legislature, as was education. Told you both my parents were teachers, and education, I could talk a lot more about that, but served as vice chair in both houses on education as well, and have done a lot of things regarding school choice, parent empowerment. Parent Trigger Act is something that I joint authored with Lori Merrow when she was the Democrat chair. I'm the Republican vice chair of education in the Senate. Became a national model for other states to follow as well. But nevertheless, while in local, regional, state government, I have always risen to leadership positions, because going back to that farm analogy, I learned the value of hard work, giving back to the community. I don't sit still real well. So by the end of my first year up there, I was the caucus whip. By the second year, I was the caucus chair, which is the #2 position. I was elected to the Senate after 4 years in the Assembly, and I was the caucus chair there after the first year, at the end of the first year. And then after several years, become the Senate Republican leader. Now, do I know how to work with the other party? Yes, not always easy, but I've been there and done that. You know, I've held my own with the governor, tried to throw me out of his office before, and we got him settled down. With Jerry Brown, that's no easy task. Got him up on our water bond. We had, he wasn't going to budge beyond $2 billion for above ground storage. We got him up to $2.7 billion. But that's neither here nor there. I just want to say that when you're working in a partisan environment and leadership position, it's different from just being in the wings of the party, and it's also different from working in nonpartisan. Nonpartisan is a lot easier in many respects. Again, focus on the problem, get it done. So in Congress, everybody, and it's been sort of stipulated that it's a mess back there. But I think that the key to that is leadership. And, you know, I know a lot of the delegation back there. I've worked with them at the state. I've been back there before them looking for money when I was in regional government, for those that have been serving there a long time. And I look forward to helping to bring some peace. I tend to be a consensus builder. That's one of the skills I learned in church leadership. And those of you that have been in church, you know, you can't fire anybody, right? They're all volunteers. They all pay their tithes. They can pull back the tithes, but, you know, you can't make them do anything. So you kind of bring them along until you get enough momentum, and then you move forward. And really, politics is no different. When you're trying to get people, everybody has different ideas. None of us agree exactly on things. And so even when somebody up here answers a question one way, another one might answer it a different way. But I think that's the thing I'd like to leave with you most. As I look at Congress, my priorities, to preempt some of the questions you will ask, are, first of all, keep taxes down. Second of all, I want a strong military. When we have a weak military, other nations tend to run all over us. Third, I want to secure the border, and yeah, that's a wall. Fourth, I want to make sure we cut the fat out of the government. And I'm telling you, there's fat everywhere. And I don't believe that just because something is public, it runs efficient. I happen to believe it's not a private profit motive as much. The private business tends to do things more efficiently, because if they can't make profit, they go out of business. Public entities, there is no incentive there for them. What is there? If they take longer, what's the consequence? They don't lose their job, they don't get cut back. And so you find within the public sector, not all of it, the most part, you find a built-in almost opposition to getting things done. So when you privatize things, you actually have generally more efficiently less cost. And we can talk a lot till the cows come home on that, and some of you are going to disagree, but that's just been my experience. So I want to cut the fat out of government. And finally, to secure our freedoms. We live in a wonderful, wonderful nation, best of the planet. You know, the school that our kids went to had over 55 languages and dialects spoken. And I know Rowland Heights is similar with the diversity. This district is diversity. My Senate seat, which is an 82% footprint, or this is an 82% congressional footprint on my Senate seat, because the Senate seat was larger, was the most diverse, had the highest API population, I guess a better way to put it, of any of the 40 Senate seats. And, you know, I was a white guy representing it, but the only reason I really represented it well is because my wife, Mei Mei, down here, is an immigrant from Taiwan, who also is fluent not only English, so she can talk with me, but Mandarin, Cantonese, and gets along pretty well in Taiwanese as well. So that's very important because the fastest growing demographic in this district and in the state is the Chinese population. So I've demonstrated the ability to lead here in this district previously under a different capacity, and I hope you'll put your trust in me to do that at the federal level as well. So thank you very much for your attention. If I have 1 minute left for question and answer. You have the easy questions for me, I hope.
Yeah, they're easy. Well, first of all, I'm going to be asking you some confrontive questions, but they're not, well, I don't think about you. And so I'm sure you're prepared to give me some good answers.
Absolutely.
Okay. Within the past 2 or 3 weeks, Facebook has been inundated by ads saying that you say one thing as far as taxes are concerned, and yet you voted several times to raise them. And when I saw those ads, I was saying, gee, these must be sponsored by a very right-wing organization. And so then when I went to go see who was sponsoring them, I was astonished to find out that the people sponsoring these ads accusing you of raising taxes, despite the fact that you said you were, was not particularly anti-raising taxes. They were anti-raising, anti-Republican. Now, do you know who the DCCC is, and why in the world, why in the world would they be presenting disingenuous information about you?
The DCCC, or the DCCC as we love to call it, is the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee. So that's the national party. That's, if you want to put it every way, Nancy Pelosi's PAC.
Okay, well, they say they're not authorized by any candidate committee.
Right, they're their own committee. So.
Well, some of the accusations against you, or one of them was, I got this question, sort of to address their questions for you. I have a personal question about something that's in your statement. The first one is, what are they accusing you of? And also, tell me about why you supported an increase on the containers coming into the port.
So the container fee, well, let me back up a little bit. I told you that I was founding chairman of the Alameda Quarter East Construction Authority, right? We went back to Washington, D.C., hat in hand, and we got the largest earmark of the 1998 Transportation Efficiency Act. It was like T21, or it was some flavor of tea. They always had some cutesy little name. But we got a large earmark there. It became known as the COG Hogs, Council of Governments, because that's who we were representing. But that is a small pot of money. You have to leverage it with other money. You can draw it down, but you have to match it with something else. So what are we going to match it to? So when I went to Sacramento, I told you we're looking for transportation funding. So Alan Lowenthal, Democrat, was chair of, and now Congressman, I should add, from Long Beach, was chair of the Transportation Committee. I was vice chair. And he had this bill, I don't remember the number of it, but it would impose a $20 fee on every container, and those funds then would go toward infrastructure for basically freight goods movement in transportation corridors, which would be like the 60 freeway, because that's been designated as a goods movement corridor, as well as around the port. And we've since learned a lot more about all the particulates from the diesel soot and everything else around the ports and how that hurts people around there. So that was creating pushback on expanding the port, because they were having, that would mean expanding more diesel soot and all that stuff. So this was a pot of funding that helped address all of that. I told Alan I didn't support his tax, but I said, he was saying that there's some other discussions going on. If we could just keep it alive, that would be good. I said, Alan, I will support it in committee. I will not vote for it on the floor. In fact, I will speak against it on the floor, but I'll keep it alive for discussion. This bill was never signed into law, but it did keep the discussion going. And we have the Pure Pass program for a while down at the port. I think it's still going, where that's a whole different thing we can talk about. But there's also been other programs to help replace and repurpose the power plants for the trucks. Some of them are going electric now around the port itself, so it helps reduce the amount of pollution that people near there have to suffer. It was said at the time that a $20 fee on a container of tennis shoes, for instance, would be 2 cents per pair of shoes. So it was de minimis, but it was a tax. You know, it was called a fee, but it was a tax. So that's that one.
Okay. The other question I have is about your statement in the voter book is very clear about requiring people to work to receive welfare. Now, I'm concerned about that because unemployment is very, very low at this point. People are receiving welfare for a reason, and yet you seem to be pretty black and white about this. With unemployment so low in LA, where are people going to find jobs?
Well, we might have to make jobs for them, but the point is right now our welfare system, we have about 30% of the nation's welfare with 12% of the population. So we're way top heavy on those that are on welfare. And we have created a hammock instead of, placed a hand up where they're getting too comfortable in this. And so I do believe we have to have something in there, even if it's make work. And I was working out in the fields when I was a kid. I'm not advocating they're working our fields, but we find something for them. Because anything that is given, and I understand, there are a lot of people that welfare helps, but it has to be a temporary program. It can't be a permanent program. And for so many, we've made a permanent program. Tangentially to that is childcare. I have heard a lot of stories about people that won't take a promotion at work because they're going to lose their state-subsidized child care. We got to figure that out because you can't artificially keep things down just so we can keep a government program alive that's propping people up. And I get it that when you're a working mom and dad, you got to have somebody watch the kids. But when the government's doing it, we perversely once again give them an incentive not to better themselves and get to launch higher yet where they, foundation or whatever else, to spring higher so they're not just permanently kept in a state that's untenable.
Well, Jerry Heinzel, local resident here for over 30 years. I see that on a quick Google check, the 39th district here, one person, Mr. Royce, has gained $111,000 from NRA. How much money have you gained from them in your battles?
In this battle, none. I don't know, and I've probably gotten money from NRA at the state, I just don't know. I'm A-rated by NRA, whatever that means.
Several different ways that they bring in the monies nowadays, and they're covering it much more. The same question goes to you, Young. How much money and how much will you take? Have you taken already?
I haven't taken any money from NRA.
And you'll continue?
They haven't given me any money.
Good. Sam, I feel comfortable with you already. How about you, Sam?
I haven't taken any money from the NRA, and I've taken a pledge to never take any money from them.
Thank you for that, Sam.
All right. So I got kind of like an open-ended question.
She has an A rating.
What's
that? She has an A rating from the NRA.
As you all know, you guys are replacing Ed Royce, who's been a very active congressman for this community. So one of my top questions is to find out, since a lot of you guys already know what Ed Royce does here at Rowland Heights, what top legacy projects or federally investment projects would you guys keep alive when Ed Royce leaves?
Well, Ed Royce was never big on earmarks. In fact, I had a question before that if they reinstitute earmarks, will you get them? And I said, well, if they have them, I oppose earmarks also, because that's usually how you get things to fund in the district. Transportation is a little bit different because we have a transportation tax, federal tax that's collected, and that has to come back. We don't get our fair share of transportation money back. But, we don't have earmarks right now. If we do have them, I would certainly be doing things that, I could to. And I'm not sure what other legacy projects he has. Young Kim, I guess you're a legacy project of his.
Congressman Royce has been serving as the chairman of the Pork Busters Coalition. You probably know that. He fought against any pork projects. But what he did was, he was very good, and once the money is appropriated, appropriations is different. As your representative, he's worked really hard to fight for the funds that are rightfully ours, especially in the transportation area. 5760, those transportation funds.
You want me to thank you.
All right. That is important, and we need to do that.
There has been a general elimination of regulations. And my concern is they've swung so far the other direction that a regular citizen does not have the same clout that whether it's a government entity or net neutrality or even trying to fight your health care insurer and just the general culture. And I'd like to know how you are going to protect Joe citizen who needs protections, whether it's banking, stock market. Most of these regulations have been weakened so much, and now they're trying to weaken our emissions.
Terry, we've only got a minute left, so
the question is, what is your attitude towards strengthening or weakening or continuing the same course that is continuing in Washington at this time as far as regulations?
I don't think we have too few regulations, if that was your question. I'm a guy that thinks that we do better if we don't have a lot of regulations. There are some things, yes, we found during the Great Depression that you have to have some regulation on banks, you can't have runs on banks, you have to have some structure like that. But you look at Silicon Valley, I mean, our economy now in California, we're the 5th largest economy in the world, and I'm not sure exactly what the state did or the federal government other than stay the heck out of the way, because you have a lot of entrepreneurs that are driving that. And yeah, the internet is still the Wild West, and we figured out during this last presidential cycle that we have to do something to keep foreign entities from manipulating it. And so as we get more experience, we will figure out how we have to do things. But generally speaking, the transition from the horse to the horseless carriage was also something that didn't have a whole lot of regulation involved. It was private industry figuring out how to solve a problem. And then when the solution became a problem, then the government steps in. And I would certainly support that, but not just to have a lot of regulations so somehow we sleep better at night thinking that we're safe because the government's protecting us.
Got time for one more quick question.
Hi, good evening everyone. I'm Monica Chang, and I'd like to ask Bob Huff, who is a proven politician, seasoned politician with proven track record. My question to you is, can you highlight your solution or push for good policy for immigrants and also for education and gun controls? Thank you.
Well, I do believe this country, I mean, the country was built on immigrants. Unless you're Native American, we all came here, our forefathers did. And so that has made us what is dynamic. And when I told you that our local schools where my kids were educated over 55 languages and dialects, those are high-performing schools as well. So it doesn't have to be a drain if we work with it, if we embrace it, you lean into it. And I think that's what we have to do. Education is key to all of that, to make it work. And my philosophy on education, and as many of you in the community know, is merit-based. I think we have to reward those that work hard, and sometimes you're going to have people that are economically challenged, as one of the other speakers talked about, and they need helping hands, and I get that. But at the end of the day, if our college system closes the doors to those that are qualified, and that becomes a problem for society. We need to educate our best and brightest. We need to make sure everybody has an opportunity, and it needs to be, in my estimation, merit-based.
Brings us out of time for this evening. It's almost 9 o'clock, and they will start closing the gates. We won't be able to get our cars out, but we do have time for a door prize. We've got 4 door prizes tonight. Alan will drop. Hopefully everybody got a ticket as they came in.
Hopefully you guys signed in and got your ticket, because we got some pretty cool prizes. We're going to start off with a couple bottles of wine.